Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Pac-Man here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Pac-Man World 2, specifically for the Game Boy Advance. So, last time, we actually did done, let's just say, 4 stages in particular, which appears to be Magma Opus in the Volcano World. In addition to that, we also did manage to beat the likes of the forms of Blinky, with his contraption of course. And on top of all that stuff though, we did somehow skipped over the Ocean World, probably just because of the forms of handheld's limitations, and instead of that, we ended up in the Spooky Island world, so able to actually go ahead and deal with the forms of 2 stages in that world, which appears to be, well, let's just say Haunted Boardwalk, and in addition to Night Crawling. And my goodness, well, it's not so bad in Haunted Boardwalk to me, just because, well, that particular stage doesn't go completely lengthy. Unlike Night Crawling, on the other hand, it really overstayed its welcome, which is especially noticeable considering for the fact I did not realize that, well, I have to activate every single switches until we're able to continue our progress to this point. So, anyways though, so yeah, today for this video is that this may actually be the grand finale of our Let's Play of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance, because so much to the point, as you can tell, we are now entering into the final 2 levels of the game, thankfully, which as a result, no matter what though, we can pretty much expect to believe about the fact that we're about to be able to go into the final platforming level, which appears to be by the forms of Ghost Bayou, and in addition to that, we're also going to be able to try and deal with the final boss in the game as well. Well, it's not just that, on the other hand. Well, I suppose we should probably save more discussions on that front until whenever we get into the final boss in the game. So as you can tell, we now ended up in Ghost Bayou. Now, out of all of the actual levels of this whole entire version of the game, Ghost Bayou is by far the worst level in the game in my opinion. I mean, because no matter what though, not only because the stage itself is ridiculously lengthy, and on top of that, much like the forms of how it does in Night Crawling level, this place is filled to the brim with a lot of switches we need to keep activating, and not only that though, the depth perception, like I mentioned this before, is pretty bad as far as anything else is concerned, and not to mention though is about the fact that, again, if you somehow manage to instantly able to realize about the fact that you have to be able to rely on, not only because of the forms of leaps of faith, but also you remember how about the fact that this game is so obsessed with the forms of those ridiculous placements of these ramps as obstacles? Well, there are plentiful of them in here, which no matter what though, for the most part it's not too shabby for the most part, but it's just that it gets a bit ridiculous very quickly, especially noticeable once we make our way to the halfway point of this whole entire level, which no matter what though about the fact that, like I said before, this stage really overstayed its welcome, which thankfully though, unlike the forms of how it does on the console version, where there are certain areas that you do need to be able to take down as many of those enemies as quickly as possible before you're able to progress, well, I'm happy to report that the handheld version does not have that, unless it does certain stimulations, which I could probably try and able to explain more details about this front, but honestly folks, it's just about the fact I just want to get this game done just before. Oh, you kidding me? Yeah, you see you have right there? The depth perception is not that very good in this particular stage, just because there are a couple of times though about the fact that, again, you have to rely on the forms of the drop shadow for the most part until you're able to land on these specific platforms, and no matter what though, I definitely know for a fact that a lot of players get rage on this stage very quickly, especially that this stage in particular is going to be live drainers as far as anything else is concerned, which, yeah, I guess there's nothing else to add. So, no matter what though, is about the fact that, yeah, as you can tell, we have to keep on activating every single switches throughout the majority of the stage itself. So because of that, so, yeah, so much to the point for the fact that this will be the last time we get to deal with the forms of this isometric platforming here and there. And as far as I'm aware, the game only gets harder from this point onwards. It always gets more annoying from this point onwards because platforming in isometric view just kind of stinks for the most part. Which, yeah, can you honestly tell about the fact I'm not a big fan of the forms of not only Pac-Man World 1 for the Game Boy Advance, but in addition to Pac-Man World 2, also for the Game Boy Advance as well, because I'm sorry, I just don't like those games. They're such a... well, they just felt a bit awkward to play. And not only that though, about the fact that throughout the majority of the evolves in this stage in particular, for Ghost Bayou, that there are, you know with the evolves though, very small platforms you have to navigate through, like they're really annoying to like, you know, platform on. It's mostly because of the hit detection in this game. You can actually bypass for that platform without even realizing about the fact that despite the fact that you're almost going to potentially try to land on that platform. And believe me while I'm saying this though, it reminds me of so much of that very bad hit detection when it comes to the forms of Sonic 3D Blast, or should I say Sonic 3D Flinky's Island, in some of these hill sections, specifically in let's just say in Dream Gadget Zone Act 2, in addition to Panic Puppet Zone Act 2 as well, just because again, you will miraculously manage to go through that platform. You know, with that particular moving platform, it goes like, whoop, every time whenever it decides to move. Well, to be more specifically though, I'm more into the forms of the Mega Drive / Genesis version, mind you, so yeah, I guess there's nothing else to add. So, anyway, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date of course is the 24th of June today, in some cases in 2025 today. Well, we only got 1 week left until we're about to be approaching into, not only in July, but also the second half of 2025. So no matter what though, I can't believe the actual day itself just goes by a lot quicker than I was expecting. I mean, sure, no matter what though, despite the fact that we have to do with... oh, wait a second. Oh, I get the feeling what this part is supposed to be. It feels more likely like a puzzle section more than anything, because we have to utilize with that particular referral platform there, and as you're able to actually try to place it right there, something tells me we need to build our momentum with the referral, and there you go. So, yeah, I do like that idea, in terms of the forms of platforming in mind, but again, it's just that the depth perception is not the greatest, so... but I will say that I do honestly kind of enjoy this game a little bit more compared to the forms of how it does on the first Pac-Man World game. I mean, usually for the sake of the Game Boy Advance version, as far as I was going to be on about. I mean, sure, there are some, you know, issues with this particular version of the game, which we keep on about it, since any forms have been the beginning portion of the game itself. So because of that, although suffice to say though, it's about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, I was about the fact I'm pretty sure that we're basically almost done in terms of the forms of, let's just say, some Pac-Man Let's Plays for the time. I mean, sure, I still really wish about the fact that if they're trying to able to bring up, you know, a remake of Pac-Man World 2, but chances are though is about the fact that I wouldn't expect able to make it happen anytime soon, just because, well, obviously though, as a matter of fact though, is about the fact I'm pretty sure we've only got about 2 more days to go until the Capcom Spotlight Showcase is about to be coming up, so as a result, expected to believe about the fact that, yeah, you literally just managed to able to land on that platform, but chances are you actually ended up dying instead. So as a result, that's what the drop shadow comes in, just because, well, again, the actual platforming is so finicky for the most part, especially that it's bad enough you have to deal with the forms of the D-pad rather than just the forms of the control stick or an analog stick, depending on what version of the game you're playing, just because, well, you're gonna die a lot in this place. So because of that, to be expected, this is the last platforming stage in the whole entire version of the game, so chances are though, like I said before, the game gets harder from this point onwards, so... although thankfully though, we don't have to necessarily try to worry about getting every single fruit in this place. I mean, still, no matter what though, it's just a matter of the fact that trying to go through this entire process is very ridiculous, especially noticeable with that. Yeah, that platforming section right there with all that, a lot of hills and all that stuff, yeah, that particular stuff, you're gonna see that a lot throughout the majority of the stage itself, which is especially noticeable that we've already come across into that solution ever since throughout the majority of the Volcano World, and in addition to Haunted Boardwalk, and on top of that, the previous level, Nightcrawling. So no matter what though, yeah, this is pretty, this is too much, I'm telling you, when it comes to likely for its trial and error. But at least thankfully though, if you accidentally fall off, at least you'd be safe there, as long as you don't touch the swamp, as we expected, much like the forms of haunted boardwalk level. So, I do know there's an extra life out there, but I have no worries how to be able to actually get that extra life out there, so I might as well... Really? That power pellet is useless for nothing. Oh, screw that. Oh, jeez. It's even bad enough that the invincibility frames doesn't last forever, just like, well, it's hard for me to explain it, really, just because I just want to get to the point for the fact I just want to get this stage finished before we, take on the final boss in the game, so... Oh, boy. Just oh boy in general, so... Anyway, let's discuss upon the forms of another topic at this point, and remember what I said since yesterday, that I couldn't find any of those results, during the forms of in, the most recent Pixar film, in terms of the box office department, which appears to be Illo. Basically though, Illo, so far, actually receives, $9 million for its box office, despite the fact that the budget for the film was actually $150 million for its box office, and no matter what though, it's off to a not good start, at least as far as we do know of, especially, well, despite the actual review scores is actually pretty good, despite the worst opening weekend as far as anything else is concerned. Well, especially noticeable because, relatively speaking, I get the horrible feeling for the fact that that particular film will also suffer the forms of box office bombs, just like the forms of how it does it for Lightyear, and especially noticeable with the forms of the most recent, well, not the most recent one, but it's been out for about 3 months ago, which of course you know exactly what I'm talking about, Snow White remake. So no matter what though, well, despite the fact I'm still not seeing Snow White anyway, just because, you know what I'm saying, a lot of backlashes when it comes to fans and critics alike. So yeah, you get the idea for that. Solutions worth noting for. Oh, god dang it, I overshoot myself with that particular referral technique. So, oh well, no big deal. At the very least though, that, you know, I will give this version of the game some credit for. I will mention it right away. The actual respawn points every time when you die, thankfully is a lot more generous compared to the forms of how it does in Pac-Man World 1 for the Game Boy Advance, because every time you do die at one point, throughout the forms of some sections of Pac-Man World 1 for the Game Boy Advance, you have to force yourself to go all the way back to the beginning portion of that section, and as a matter of fact though, it can be felt a bit of a slog to get through. Whilst in here though, thankfully though, the checkpoints are very frequent every time whenever you do die, so that's pretty nice all things considered, despite the fact we had to do with a lot of emphasis on isometric platforming view. So come on, get the switch, come on, thank you. Oh jeez. Still, you know what I mean about the fact that, you know, but bouncing those specific switches is pretty difficult, just because, again, your momentum is a little bit, dang it, I totally forgot about that part. Because, yeah, as I was saying, for the fact that every time you do manage to able to, like, try to perform certain moves, ranging from not only, you know, butt bounce, but in addition to, kick as well, your momentum just keeps on going a little bit forward a little bit, which is a little bit, a nuisance to me though. I mean, unlike the console version, you pretty much guarantee for the fact that you're able to go onto, stationary formation. I mean, it's hard for me to explain, because we already know for a fact that it's been, you know, 5 years ago since we've last played Pac-Man World 2 for our YouTube channel anyway, so because of that, so yeah, let's just go ahead and try to focus right here, so just in case I don't want to make any mistakes or anything else like that. If I do get game over on that particular level, I'm seriously going to be on to, like, you know, rage mode or anything else like that, because my goodness, we've been wasting a lot of lives at this point, especially we're now down to 7 lives left, so yeah, that's not a good sign. And as a matter of fact, there's a dead end right there onto the right, so we have no choice but to backtrack for a little bit, so just in case we need to, I think I get the feeling that we do need to obtain one of the fruits in order to be able to progress, so yeah, such as for instance though with the orange and stuff. So how do we get up there exactly? Well, let me just try to figure. Oh, come on! Oh jeez Louise, I'm now down to 6 lives left. Oh jeez, this is not very good. Oh, come on! Oh jeez, and now I'm 5 right now. Oh god. In fact, after we're done with this stage, I need to grind for some extra lives for the one final time, specifically into the volcano level, just because, well, I just don't want to get a game over on the final boss in the game either, just because, well, let's just say for the fact that no matter what though, we should probably save that particular topic once we're able to get to the final boss in the game itself. So, anyway, and also, another thing I would like to point out, actually, is about the fact that maybe there might be some potentials about the forms of some upcoming movie releases, specifically, though, in sometime in 2028, and so far, in regards to the forms of Marvel Studios, as far as I'm aware, those 3 movies might be considered to be releasing in 2028, and those are Blade, and Black Panther 3, and the Fantastic Four 2, which, either way though, that could be a possibility, but it's just about the fact that we have no idea what the next couple of projects will be, for the sake of the forms of Marvel Studios in mind, just because, again, that the next film we're going to be able to expect it to be releasing next, which is of course, the Fantastic Four First Steps, and in addition to that, Spider-Man Brand New Day, and Avengers Secret Wars, and, well, it's more than Secret Wars, it was Doomsday and stuff like that, so, because I keep on thinking about what's going to be up next for the sake of the forms of film releases for the future years to come, so, yeah, and once again, I do apologize about the forms of the lack of commentary sometimes, just because, you know what I'm saying, I have to concentrate on this level, which is especially noticeable considering for the fact that we'd be wasting lives fast, just because of this very unpredictable, timing issue, and in addition to that though, it's just about the fact I just want to get this game finished, you know? In fact, kind of thing about it though is about the fact that with the forms of this particular stage itself, Ghost Bayou is gargantuan, like so many, platform-to-platform kind of syndrome with isometric view platforming involved, and too many switches to activate it, and so many ways to die. So, yeah, I get the actual, the similar vibes as the forms of the Great Palace from the likes of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link sometimes. So, yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to actually describe about the forms of that specific comparison, all things considered. So, anyways, let's backtrack for a bit again, and just gonna have to make sure we don't touch the swamp again, and in fact, to make matters worse though, we've already down to, 1 life, or actually, gonna think about it, technically 2 lives left, so... Oh, jeez. Can you see why about the fact that this stage is very, very frustratingly difficult, and it's also the worst stage in the game to me, though? Just because, you know, it's very lengthy, for starters, which, again, it reminds me of, so much, also, for the sake of the forms of Eggman Land from Sonic Unleashed, for, specifically, the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3 versions, just because, well, Eggman Land is not only incredibly difficult, but it's also very lengthy too, so as a result, we can able to expect to believe that we can able to try to complete this entire stage within just about, 20 minutes tops, or anything else like that. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, you know? But thankfully though, about the fact that this stage is very generous when it comes to giving us some more extra lives, assuming of course if we don't make any several mistakes when it comes to likely for its depth perception and all that stuff. I mean, that's the thing that usually it bothers me about this particular version of the game, and also Pac-Man World 1 for the Game Boy Advance, is that, well, the lack of depth is the only major issue I have with it, so... But I digress. So... And also, about the fact that something new just came up, in regards to the forms of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds recently. And remember about the fact that there's a potential leak, about the fact that not only does SpongeBob, but also with the forms of some characters from the likes of Avatar and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is going to be coming to its way to, you know, as playable characters in the DLC for the sake of the forms of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. It turns out the actual DLC itself is officially became real, and no matter what though, and it's all thanks to the forms of how the fact that thankfully though, the actual trailer for the sake of the forms of SpongeBob, Avatar, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles DLC has been confirmed for Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, all thanks to the forms of Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, which as a result no surprise there about the fact that SpongeBob once again did manage to win the actual Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards for the sake of the films of 2025, because I'm almost assuming for the fact that someone did actually say that they can probably try to predict the Loud House or anything else like that, but of course that's not the case though, because, you know, no wonder why that SpongeBob has actually become a lot more popular since in 1999 when the actual show was first premiered and all that stuff, which I suppose that's generally it's kind of a cool coincidence about the fact that it's also kind of weird too that the racetrack is going to take place in the actual Bikini Bottom, and despite the fact that Sonic and the gang is actually driving into underwater, which is pretty crazy all things considered, despite, you know, the lack of the air meter or anything else like that, like in any other Sonic games do. Specifically, the last time we actually got the air meter from the Sonic game was in Sonic Frontiers, just because in Sonic Frontiers, they can able to actually come across into yourselves the air meter. Well, let's just say, for instance, though, the oxygen air. Assuming if you do manage to play as, like, you know, as Sonic specifically in some sections in one of the islands in particular that involves water and all that. So chances are though is about the fact that, well, there's no need for air bubbles in Sonic Racing Cross Worlds after all. So, but I digress. So, are you kidding me? Oh jeez. We're wasting lives again, but that's just because, you know, the timing on you know, referral jumping is a little bit too finicky to me though, but oh well, at the very least we did manage to activate the switch at the very least, so. And yeah, what I also found is a little bit crazy about this is though, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, it looks like that SpongeBob and Patrick are, potentially speaking of, driving that familiar car from the likes of the films of the first movie specifically, which appears to be the Paddy Wagon. So as a result, that's actually pretty cool to able to actually have that in there. And I'm afraid to tell you for the fact that I don't think it's possible for the fact that most of these characters do have voice clips or something like that. I mean, time will definitely tell though once the actual game comes out on the September 25th, at least as far as we do know of. So, and also, we have no idea when does the forms of DLC 2 is going to be releasing, because obviously, though, that the first one out of the, well, let's just say, for instance, though, the first of the 6 Season Pass DLC we're able to expect to get first, which is, of course, Minecraft featuring Steve, Alex, and Creeper to start things off with the actual Season Pass and all that stuff. So, yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting for that point. So, anyway, thank goodness, Ghost Bayou is completely done, which, gee, no matter what though, it actually took me for about over 20 minutes to able to complete that stage, which, gee, thanks for nothing I suppose, despite the fact that we've wasted so many, lives very, very quickly, especially with that particular isometric platform issue, and in addition to, like, well, you get the idea. So, from now on though, let's grind for some extra lives for the final time, and hopefully we can now able to actually take on the final boss in the game. Or should I say, not just one, but 2 final bosses, only one. Because the reason why I say this is because unlike the console version, basically though that the Spooky is the true final boss in the console version of the game. And to do that though, we have to complete Ghost Bayou level first, and as a result, once you do complete Ghost Bayou level, then obviously though Spooky did somehow manage able to transport it into, well, let's just say Pac Village, and as a result, it's up to Pac-Man to able to go all the way back to Pac Village to able to actually try to like restore the golden fruits into that particular tree in Pac Village, and then once you're done with that, you can now able to take on Spooky as the final boss. So in here though, as you can tell, we meet up with the falls of that particular tree right there, or should I say, Wormwood, at least as far as I do know about the forms of the boss's name, by the way, and as a result, we can now able to actually try to take him on. Unlike the console version, we have to go through a serious amount of obstacles, basically. So in here, though, it's like a proper boss fight. So that seems pretty interesting, all things considered. So we are, at the very least, technically, fighting against with 5 bosses in this particular version of the game. So yeah, it's actually kind of interesting, all things considered. So, despite the fact that, you know, unlike the console version, only has like 6 bosses, so Anyway, so this particular fight is pretty self-explanatory, but again, it can be really annoying because of the forms of unpredictable patterns sometimes. So basically though, not able to deal the amount of damage to the forms of Wormwood, as you can tell. Basically, as you can see, he actually starts spewing out those little spiky stuff from its mouth. And it's your chance able to actually kick it back all the way. Ah, oh, dang it, I somehow died. Oh well. No big deal, because otherwise, though, that's our first attempt done. So now this is now our second attempt on this run. So hopefully, though, we can able to take him on for reals without any sort of issues there, despite, you know, the depth perception still is not that great, to be honest with you. So yeah, basically, you have to reflect the actual, the projectile back at the false Wormwood, and then if you try to do it more often, it's your chance to able to actually hit him. So as a result, specifically if you try to perform a kick ability, then you should able to actually be good to go. And then if you keep on doing that, chances are though is about the fact that exponentially we can now able to actually hit into the final boss in the game. So either way, or should I say the true final boss, I should say. Oh yeah, every once in a while though, he starts able to actually spew out the forms of one of those skeleton pirate enemies, if you couldn't tell. And obviously though is about the fact I get the feeling we do have to take this thing down quickly just before the time runs out or something like that. So despite the fact though, on the other hand, there's no timer to be shown, which I felt was a little bit odd. And that was it, basically. So yeah, another joke of a boss fight right there. I mean, to be fair though, about the fact that he does manage to able to like becomes a little bit of a challenge, but regardless of such though, something tells me we might able to actually get the final 2 golden fruits in this particular fight right there, which is kind of surprising, considering the fact that we can able to actually potentially try to able to gather all 5 of those golden fruits before he take on Spooky himself. And speaking of a devil, there he is right there. So no matter what though is about the fact that we need to able to go after him until we able to decide able to deal with him, of course. So but yeah, I guess there's nothing else I can really say about this for the most part. Although, there's also another explanation I'd like to point out, but I'll save that particular discussion for later. So for now, we somehow defeated Wormwood. So, and of course, we're able to get ourselves a password feature. Now, here's the thing about the Fonz's password right there. Basically though, if you try to insert that particular password, assuming of course if you do manage to defeat Wormwood, and if you try to insert that code, I think that does not take you straight into the true final boss immediately. So instead you have to be able to have a rematch against with the forms of Wormwood again. So yeah, it's not that very acceptable, mind you. But regardless of such though, we somehow managed able to become golden, just like the console version, but despite the fact though, on the handheld version does not give us the opportunity to able to become a golden form. So, oh well, no big deal though, because here we go on to the true final boss in Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance, and that's what appears to be none other than Spooky himself. And this is by far the most difficult fight in the entire game. Not just because it's the final boss, not because it's hard, it's because it's a combination of every single issues I have with the game, specifically not only the depth perception, because the ginormous hitbox, especially noticeable with that particular meteor shower attack that Spooky decides able to keep on activating for. Most of the time though, the hitbox feels a bit too janky for the most part, and in addition to that though, we also have to avoid a lot of those spiky plants right there, so just to ensure for the fact you don't want to get hit so many times, because otherwise, if you did get a game over at one point, then you have to have a rematch against with the forms of Wormwood again. So yeah, it's not that very acceptable to me though, but regardless of such though, is about the fact that for the most part we are doing quite well, despite, you know, we accidentally come across into our another death again, just because I refused to able to try to take him on with only 1 unit of health left. So that way we should be able to actually try to able to deal with him with just only for about 9 lives left for the most part. So good thing we did manage to able to farm some more extra lives just as soon as we were able to actually get to this point. So But yeah, I highly suggest you're able to run away from him for a little while until he decides to actually activate the actual meteor shower attack. Like, for instance, though, he's going to be using his scepter right there, and as a result, now is your chance to try to attack him. So now we're on to the final phase of the fight, where, to put it simply, though, it's just about the fact it's only a matter of time for the fact that we got to keep on, you know, trying to run away from Spooky until, you know, he decides to use his scepter to try to activate the meteor shower attack, and that way we should able to deal with this boss fight no problemo whatsoever. I mean, sometimes, though, again, the hitbox is with the forms of that particular meteor shower projectile attack he keeps on summoning just feels a bit kind of wonky to me. So anyway, and also there are a couple of times, though, you never know what's to come if you accidentally run into the forms of those little spiky plants right there without even realizing it. So, but hey, at least on the plus side is, though, it's about the fact that this is the last level in the game, so we can pretty much expect to believe that we can able to actually conclude this game once and for all. So there we go. And that pretty much does it for the most part. So we get ourselves the final password in the game, which is pretty pointless because obviously, though, we somehow complete the game. So either way, and now let's see the ending of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance version, which I'm pretty sure the ending itself plays out exactly the same as the forms of how it does on the console version. So as a result, Spooky's now going to be imprisoned again. So as a result, though, and I suppose we're able to potentially try to meet up with Spooky again until for a specific kart racing game, which as a result, you guys should know what I'm talking about for the sake of time. So either way, so it looks like for the fact that no matter what, though, is about the fact that the Pac Village has been once again restored, except this time around, though, unlike the console version, we don't usually see a Pac dog companion or 4 ghosts have been run away from that particular Pac dog in mind. So all you really get is just these little still images of, you know, Pac people celebrating, and in addition to Pac-Man himself, to give ourselves a bit of a thumb up, and that's about it basically. So as a result, it's a shame we never actually get ourselves a nice little ending charm whenever we did manage to see, you know, 4 of these ghosts are having a bit of a chat after, you know, the aftermath of the flawless victory against with the forms of Spooky or anything else like that. So yeah, chances are, though, is about the fact that, again, it's probably because of the handheld's limitations. So, oh well, no big deal. So as you can see, we ended up back in Pac Village again for not only trying to showcase off this particular very familiar maze gameplay structure, which I'm pretty sure that it's going to be played out very similar to the forms of how it does on the console version, basically. So as a result, though, is about the fact that depending on what building you go into, like, there's only like 4 mazes in the whole entire game, I'm pretty sure. So, because remember with the forms of that particular Galaxian item we somehow obtained from some stages, well, you can able to actually participate in going into the actual proper mazes, which, like I said before, it plays pretty much exactly like the forms of how it does on the console version. Like, basically, though, every time you get hit by a ghost, basically, though, you lose 1 life. And I'm pretty sure you start the thing off as in 3 lives. So as a result, though, again, 1 touch of these ghosts, then you basically lose a life. But if you lose all of your lives, then obviously, though, you can able to actually try again if you wanted to. So either way. So, yeah, I guess that's all there is to it, basically, though. And there's also time attack as well, which, like I said before, in order able to actually participating in the actual time trials, basically, is about the fact that if you come across into a clock, you can able to actually, well, complete the stage again, but this time with a time limit. So as a result, yeah, you can definitely know what I mean if we somehow manage to able to try to show that off after we only shown off 1 particular maze stage, which I'm pretty sure this stage is obviously based off from the snowy environment as far as I'm usually concerned with. So anyway, and there's also reassuring about this too, for the fact that no matter what, though, I think that's as far as I can try to say about the forms of anything else, though, really. I mean, sure, no matter what, though, I'm probably not going to go through every single stages in Time Attack anyway, just because, well, let's get into my final thoughts of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance. It's something. I mean, relatively speaking, I was about the fact I still honestly prefer playing the console version over a bit more, just because of how amazing that particular game looks on not only for the GameCube, but also on the PlayStation 2, PC, and Xbox especially, although despite the fact that the Xbox version only came out in North America. So, as a matter of fact though, do I even recommend the Game Boy Advance version of Pac-Man World 2? No. No, not really, no. Because, well, I will have to admit though, there are only 2 positive things I can probably think about this particular version of the game. Actually, 3, actually. First of all, I do really like the emphasis on the fonts of that river roll jumping skill, because again, it reminds me of so much of the spin dash jumping from the good old Sonic games, from the likes of not only from the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, but as well as Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Well, technically Sonic the Hedgehog 2, because that was the first game to introduce the spin dash ability. So, anyway, in addition to Sonic Adventure 2 as well, just because spin dash jumping is so satisfying if you're trying to able to actually do some speedrun techniques, which, as a result, that will be the case. So as a result though, yeah, I do like that particular feature was being added on Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance. So as a result, despite it can be felt a bit tricky to execute sometimes just because of that, well, the button inputs needs to be accurate, and in addition to that, I do feel very generous when it comes to likely for its checkpoint system in this particular version of the game, because again, every time you do die at one point at any point of the level, basically though, you can able to resume your progress from here on. So, at the very least though, the checkpoint is not too shabby for the most part, unlike, you know, Pac-Man World 1 for the Game Boy Advance sometimes. So, and third and most importantly for the positive aspects though, I still really like the actual world themes for Pac-Man World 2, because they are very, very cool and imaginative as well. But that's how the positives ends though, because everything else about this particular version of the game to me though, it just feels a bit, well, kind of meh to me. I mean, for the most part, it's probably because the depth perception is not the greatest, like I said before, but also the boss fights are a total joke, aside from the final boss in the game. So, no matter what though, we should probably expect to realize that go for the console version, just because it doesn't matter if it's on the PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube, Xbox, or PC especially, because I would seriously recommend those particular console releases of Pac-Man World 2 over this, just because there's nothing right to hum about. Like, for instance though, most of these levels have been cut just because of, you know, handheld limitations, including the ocean world. So, yeah, that's as far as I can say about the fonts of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance, basically. So it's not that very good to me though, especially because, well, as you can tell, I somehow managed to quit. So as a result, yeah, I guess that's all there is to it in terms of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance. And of course, just like the first game on the Game Boy Advance, in order to be able to see the staff credit sequence, we have to exit the game, and you have to go to options and select credits. So, and I'm pretty sure just like the first Pac-Man World game for the Game Boy Advance, I'm pretty sure the credits are going to be in loop as long as you press the B button. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching of our Let's Play of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance. I know this particular version of the game might feel a bit super frustrating sometimes compared to, you know, the console version, but I'm biased, I guess, when it comes to preferring console versions over handheld equivalents. So, plus it's me. So this is me, Pac-Man, from the likes of the Mexi Toys, and hopefully in the near future, we can finally decide able to actually tackle through Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness. Or if not, we can probably go on to the Monster kart racing genre with Pac-Man Rally or anything else like that. So we shall see. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.